lying
Baby
silently
Ghost was born, yeah.
in his blood-stained hands. He looked up and raised the baby and appeared to be covered in oozing, inky black liquid, much like that had covered Neil a couple weeks prior. It did not cry out, but it was alive, and it moved when he held it up. When its eyes opened, they were as black as my wife's, as black as the doctor's. In unison, they all breathed his name. Zalgo.
Yeah, this is
I ripped my hand free of my wife's iron grip and stumbled out of the room, barreling into the nurses passing the corridor just outside.
Get me, get me, get me.
When I stood up and looked back into the room, I could see the inky black tendrils seeming to extend from the doctor and my newborn across the floor to where I stood. I turned and ran down the hall to the elevator and slammed my finger onto the buttons. When I looked back, the tendrils had come into the hallway, yet no one else seemed to notice until it slithered over their feet and up their legs, at which point they abruptly stopped, turned.
Good, I win, I'm the best.
Obsidian eyes.
Yes.
I abandoned my effort to call the elevator and broke into a panicked run for the stairs. I ran down the 15 flights of stairs all the way to the lobby, tore ass out into the parking lot, hopped into my car, and started driving. I didn't know where the fuck I was going, I just had to get the fuck away from there. I don't know if I'm going crazy. It certainly seems like it. That I can't be around anyone I know anymore.
Guy sounds like
they all have those same eyes and those same dead stares at even my child. Oh God, my baby. I still saw those eyes staring at me from cars behind me, and by some strange coincidence, the same biker from the previous Friday night at the bar
pulled music
up
change
beside me, an hour away from the hospital, and followed me for nearly 2 miles. He'd turn and stare at me, grinning. I couldn't see his eyes through his sunglasses this time, but I knew it was the same guy. His tattoos seemed to move of their own free will. The flaming skull on his right bicep began bleeding from its eye sockets. As soon as I could, I slammed on my brakes, allowing him to fly past me as I swerved to my left and did a U-turn. I think I lost him, but that was about an hour ago. I'm at a motel 3 hours out of town. The first place I found that has Wi-Fi.
Wow, you just doxed yourself.
Tired, and I'm shaking.
Literally shaking.
My hand itches where my wife's nails scratched me open.
I
honestly don't know what to do or who I can turn to. The story will sound insane and I'll probably be institutionalized, and I'm not sure that wouldn't be the best thing for me, but I just can't bear to look into those eyes.
Oh shit, you're fucked.
Every time I see someone new and they stare at me, I start to panic. I just know it's out there looking for me. Whatever it is.
Zalgotha.
And even when I lay down and start to drift off to sleep, I hear those words.
Okay, friend.
He comes.
Now you're kind of spooking me, dude. This is just a joke, right? I wish. Oh yeah, fuck him up. This game just got awesome. Do it. Do it to me. Fucking. It was my wife. I realized Zago looked like my wife. Who fucking defeated that? Talking some mad criminy. These green fox. You absorbed my asshole. Okay. The Gristers, The Silence. Featuring and written by Michael Kemp. Maple Creep. Does that mean Spanish and Italian? Some Canadarm did this? I want some Canada stories.
My bedroom in my childhood house is adjacent to what used to be my sister's room at the end of a long hallway.
You talk
My door at a
funny,
90-degree
bud.
angle from hers, with just a small wall separating the two rooms. The house was built in the 70s, so it's not terribly old. But because my room is in the corner of the house and the insulation could probably use updating, it is always freezing in the winter and sweltering in the summer. It had never occurred to me until recently that it was odd that I never heard anything coming from my sister's room while we were growing up. No phone calls, no laughter, no banging or knocking, nothing. I had always attributed it to good insulation, which logically makes no sense.
Oh, just
because
fucking
the
launch these
insulation
at the
is crap.
start, you idiot.
Now
Yeah, I'm the
silence is
best.
all I can think about. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Regrettably, I've moved back in with my parents after having moved out 8 years ago for college.
Oh, get another one.
In college, I met a beautiful girl. I fell in love.
Yo, I love this game.
The marriage lasted a few years, but recently ended for reasons I don't really want to get into here.
I'm not even gonna buy anything.
I had been living in Austin, and was still living with her because neither of us could afford to move out on our own until the lease was up.
Just instantly
Living like
whip
that
it.
Was a bad idea. I became suicidal, and my parents were so worried about me that one day my dad just showed
they
up
commit
and
suicide.
begged that I return home with them so that I could regroup, start over, and move on.
Yo, you should play this game. It's the best one.
So I packed up my things and
Think I
moved
should
back to
even
Missouri,
bother throwing
back
another
to
one
the home
down?
I grew
Or?
up in. The first days here, they were hard. All I wanted to do was go back to Austin, get my job back, and have depressed sex with my ex-wife. I knew that wasn't healthy, and I knew that it wasn't
Yo,
what
I'm the
was best for me.
best.
So I started to occupy my time with hobbies and looking for another job. After 3 weeks, I still had no leads on a job, no money left in savings,
Lioness.
and my parents had to start paying my bills. I had become a 26-year-old man, still living with his parents,
Ew.
back to where I
That's
was
like
when I was
every
18.
man of today, though.
Except
so.
then, I was at least working at a
Guard
freaking
your
bookstore
shits.
and didn't have any bills.
You should just save up for this.
I started spending all my time in my room, talking to my parents
Once
or
again.
anyone else for that matter less and less.
Every man.
In my mind, I wove a spider's web, a tangled mess that connected this regret to that unrelated.
They will
mistake.
never be defeated. Look at that
And
shit.
sadness collected like dew on the strands.
Tricky.
I started forgetting if
So
I
many
used to
good things
laugh.
to get.
And when I did,
I'm speaking.
my own laughter sounded strange to me. Every day, I imagined large, hot bullets coming out of nowhere and blasting through my chest. I felt like it would let the air out of all the emptiness that bloated there. After a couple days of not showering, I went into the bathroom that is in the long hallway I mentioned, right next to the 2 bedrooms, and started to take a shower. I didn't even have the energy to stand, so I placed my toiletries on the side of the tub, curled up into the
Place the
fetal position,
shit in my tub.
let the water run over me, and wept. I wept for my failed marriage, wept for how pathetic I was to be living with my parents,
I'd
for the
prefer
dog
if
I
they
lost,
didn't act.
wept for
Just
all the mistakes
tell
and
the
missed
story.
opportunities.
Okay.
For how long and
Give me that
hard
goal,
I had been
girl.
weeping.
Upgrade the boulder to max. Yeah, okay.
After nearly an hour in the shower, I got
Ah,
up, wrapped a
okay.
towel
We need
around my
another
waist,
victory.
and checked my eyes to see how red and puffy they were. I didn't want my parents to know I'd been crying. I barely recognized the person staring back at me in the mirror. Face unshaven, eyes bloodshot, massive purple bags under the eyes, and redness from crying extending all the way down my cheeks. I couldn't believe that this is what I had become. I took a long, hard look at myself and said aloud
Probably
the
don't need
mantra
the
I say to
second one.
myself silently all the time. I want to die.
Sick.
I said it aloud over and over again, watching my tongue move in the mirror as I said it, caressing the words with my lips, as if saying them would make it happen.
Is love, sweet love.
After I finished my pity party, I peeked out the door to see if my mom was in the living room,
Pivy
which
party.
was to my left. I looked that way, but what caught my eye wasn't to my left.
Upgrade
but in my
Leo. Yeah,
periphery
okay.
To my right.
To
To my right should just be the wood paneled door to my sister's old room, which is now the piano room.
Beat the Chinese at their
The
own
matching
game.
door to my room right next to hers.
Instead,
What I swore I saw was a heavy iron door with rounded iron bolts all along the perimeter between the 2 bedroom doors.
Oh, fuck you.
A
This thing's
faint
leveling
orange light
up.
trickled from underneath it.
That's not fair.
I swung my head around to get a better look, but it wasn't there. Confused, I tried to figure out what I had seen. I turned my head to my left to look at the stairs in the living room. I tried to use my peripheral vision to see what was going on upstairs,
Loser.
and I didn't see the iron door, but the usually white carpet, from what I could tell, was almost a burnt orange by the bedroom doors and progressively faded into white, like one of those paint gradients. When I looked directly at it, everything looked normal. I tried this exercise 5 times, each time with the same result. Orange, but no door when I looked to my left, nothing when I looked to my right. Towing my way towards the small wall space between the doors, I was determined to examine it thoroughly. I ran my hands along the dividing space, knocking on it. I tried to look up and down while standing directly in front of it, but I saw no changes. I closed, and then opened my door, as well as my sister's. I put my face right in the corner where the wall stopped being her wall, and it started being my wall. To my left, coming from my room, I heard movement and then a hard crash. Something shot past my legs, and my heart started pounding out of my chest.
I think the impact does
I
less
relaxed a
damage
little
than
when
it
I saw what
exploding,
raced
so
out
if
of
it
the
hits a
room
skull
was just the cat.
out here, then
still freaked
it does
out.
a lot.
I inched into the bedroom.
Should have tested
I
her.
sighed and laughed at myself when I saw what happened. The cat liked to nap on the ironing board that was sitting near the wall. He must have bumped the iron when he moved and knocked the iron to the ground.
What's funny?
I walked over to pick it up because the liquid from the water compartment was seeping into the carpet. As I bent over to pick it up, I noticed a gash in the paint where the iron must have hit the
You
wall.
can see
as
your
it fell down.
gash, dude.
The missing chunk of the wall had even fallen to the floor, right next to the iron. As I picked up the iron and the piece of wall, it dawned on me that I had only heard the noise out of my left ear. This struck me as extremely odd, because the iron had hit the wall that was between the bedrooms, and I would have been able to hear it echo from her room with my other ear. I thought maybe I was making this up, so I decided to test it. There was a small remote control helicopter my dad had received for Christmas and never used. I took it out of the box, put
Good.
some batteries in it, and started flying it around my room. I cleared off all the furniture along the shared wall and practiced setting the helicopter down facing the wall, raising it up a few feet, and then running it straight into the wall, watching it crash to the ground.
Yeah, he's so piss ass.
I did this
level
enough times
max
to where I could do this with my eyes closed, and it would always hit the wall in exactly the same spot. I set the helicopter down one more time in the takeoff spot, exited the room, closed the door, went into my sister's room, and closed her door as I entered. I sat down on the floor next to our shared wall and pressed my ear flap against the wall.
At the end of the game, no
I
cinematic. It
flipped
just
the
goes back
switches
to
on
the
remote
menu.
control and did exactly as I had practiced.
Complete.
I lifted off and then pressed the forward button and waited for the crash.
Okay, this
against the
time I
wall.
waited. A skellants. We'll test our theory.
Not a sound.
I demand your skellants.
I thought maybe I had messed it up, so I stood up, opened her door,
Is
went
that a
into the
fucking
hall,
cross
and opened
one?
my
Yeah,
door.
your shit. Yeah, bet you didn't know I was like
looked in the
this.
room.
Ah,
What I saw
false.
could not have freaked me
Well,
out
he was
more.
behind the thing though.
Against the wall was the
Still
helicopter,
not. Still
sideways,
untested.
leaning on its blades, exactly where I had practiced crashing it. There is no logical explanation as to why I couldn't have heard it hit the wall. Sound travels better through solids than it does through air, and the wall is thin.
Oh shit, that's fucked up.
I should have heard the crash. I should have heard the crash. I should have heard something.
Crashing the boys.
Instead, nothing.
Oh, look how fast that
Silence.
shit is.
Convinced I had done something wrong, I decided to test this more thoroughly. I took out my phone,
Do it.
opened the voice memo app, and whispered,
Good.
"This is ridiculous," from a few feet away from the phone.
I want to
stopped
get
it,
that
pushed the play button,
prolificacy.
and heard my own voice perfectly clear, reassuring me that this is indeed ridiculous. Knowing that this would work, I pressed the record button
Oh, yeah,
and
get
placed the
them.
phone against my wall in my bedroom.
Healing Helens.
I closed both doors and entered her room,
30
banging
Helens
my
agree.
fists on the wall as I went. I knocked, "Shave and a haircut, 2 bits," on the wall across from where my phone should be. I pushed the piano against the wall.
Yeah, it just ends
and
with a
started
you
playing
lose
Beethoven's
screen.
Fifth, poorly I might add, and singing along as loudly as possible. Na 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 na,
Okay.
na 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 na. I laughed to myself and
That's
knew
like
that the
the-
phone would have
no.
picked up this. I marched back into my room, picked up the phone, and spoke into it. Mystery solved. I opened the file and pressed play. I heard shuffling from setting the phone down. I heard what must have been me setting up against the wall. I heard my footsteps and the door closing.
Strengthy.
Then, I heard nothing. Boop. The recording had 45 seconds of nothing.
You fucker.
Then I heard the door open. Footsteps again. And then I heard my own voice.
Mystery solved.
I wasn't paying attention.
This
what
couldn't be
story was.
real. This could not be happening. How is there only silence? The sound had to carry. I plugged my phone into a loud external speaker
yes.
and turned it up all the way to listen to the recording.
Fuck you, kill yourself, narrator. Yeah.
Shuffling, setting the phone
I
down.
don't like this fella.
Footsteps. The door closing.
Witch.
Then I heard it.
Oh yeah, that witch
But
tower.
it wasn't Beethoven's
We don't
Fifth.
even need this
It was something
anymore.
between a hiss and a lullaby. I don't know how else to explain it.
40,000.
An old woman's voice, faintly cool.
Okay, just buy more
hissing.
rocks. This- This guy's saying this.
I broke out in a cold sweat as soon as I heard these words,
Ooh.
and I slowly mouthed the English translation to myself. You will speak. You will enter.
What?
And the eternal silence you desire will
He
surround you.
translated from ought.
Lost in my thoughts, too preoccupied to be paying attention to anything else. I thought my heart was going to burst out of my chest when I heard my own voice scream on the speaker at probably 160 decibels.
Mystery solved.
I yanked my phone from the auxiliary cable, causing the speaker to drop to the ground with a static hiss. I began to hyperventilate. This could not be real. How could I have heard this? No one else in my family speaks Spanish. What the hell was going on? Was I going crazy? Maybe I was. I mean, that's the only thing that makes any sense. I've been suicidal for the past 6 months and had attempted my own hanging more than once. After one such attempt, just before my parents came to get me, I had been put on suicide
I fucked
watch,
up hanging myself,
stripped
dude.
off all my clothing so that I couldn't try to strangle myself with it, and was placed in a padded cell next to all the other crazies there. I listened to their screams for over 30 hours before I spoke with a therapist. Assured him that I had no
This shit
suicidal
story
ideas,
is 90%
and was
logistics.
released.
Just to let you know what the setup was like.
I had worked in
Nothing
the
was
mental health
fucked.
field for a while,
It was
and I knew that
legit.
my diagnosis was dysthymia, which is when a person's mood is generally low, but it is not as severe or clinical as major depressive disorder. Someone with dysthymia does not hear voices or have any other symptoms associated with schizophrenia, nor do they experience any other form of psychosis, or visual or auditory hallucinations. Because of what I thought I heard on the recording, the logical part of me concluded that I must have developed something worse. After mulling it over, I decided that because of my recent trauma and life changes, my condition had exacerbated into major depressive disorder with psychotic features.
Don't
I knew I
self-diagnose.
needed help, but I didn't want to put that burden on my parents. They were paying for everything after all, and I had no health insurance to pay for a psychiatrist.
Why
I
don't you get a
decided
girlfriend?
that I was intelligent enough and familiar
Nope,
enough
don't
with
do
the
that
disorder
either.
to be able to distinguish delusions from reality. A few days passed, and I slept on the couch downstairs to avoid
Stupid
sleeping
people
in the
think
bedroom.
they're smarter
I
than they
avoided,
really are.
at
And
all
smart
costs, looking down
people
the hall.
underestimate their intelligence. Well,
But every time I would come up the stairs,
stupid
I would
people
see
think
the
they're
orange
smarter
light
than
emanating
everyone
from the
else, and
doorways.
smart people just think everyone
I would
else
hurry past
has
and
the
pay no
same
attention
level
to it.
of intelligence. Not that
I
they're
could keep this under
necessarily
control.
stupid.
I told myself.
That's fucked up.
I hadn't heard anything since the recording, and had only seen the pale orange light.
Oh, mystery water. Vote water.
Eventually, I mustered up the courage to face my fear of the bedrooms and sleep in my own room. I slept there most of my adolescent life. Nothing about it had changed. I had changed, but there was nothing wrong with the rooms.
All these stories
I
give
lay in
fucking
bed
little
and
details
heard
that
nothing
no.
but my
It's
own
to make it
thoughts.
real.
Then I tried to clear my head of all the thoughts and go to sleep.
Dunning-Kruger effect.
I did, but then
That
I
the one?
realized that I could hear it. Silence. The silence was deafening. No ambient noise. I had left the ceiling fan off, and I could hear absolutely nothing.
I can hear
Silence.
absolute zero.
Nothing. Emptiness.
Science.
I curled up under the covers and started humming a song I learned as a child to comfort myself, assuring myself that I could still hear. I needed to calm down. A panic attack was about to hit. A warm shower always calms me down when I can't take it anymore.
Oh, you got
It helps me sleep.
You fucked.
I got out from under the covers, fled from the silence into the bathroom, and shut the door.
Oh, I think there's
I
already.
hopped
Yeah,
into the
fuck.
shower,
You just
turned it
wasted
on,
a rack.
and allowed the sound to wash over my ears,
Nope.
taking the silence with it. And I let the water wash away my fear and anxiety.
This game is fake.
I watched it spiral and go down the drain.
I'm the
I bathed
best.
like I always do.
I thought there's
I
gonna be
just stayed in there
skeletons
as
and
long
then
as I could.
zombies would come, and then
Until
that
the warm
didn't
water
happen.
ran
It's
in.
just skeletons.
I turned
This
off
game
the
is
water
called
and
Sparta
immediately
versus
began humming to
Zombies.
myself because I feared the silence. I hummed all the way from the shower until I got to the sink. I turned the water on in the sink so I could hear it splashing.
Level max.
I dried off and looked at myself in the mirror. I had lost weight since I last looked at myself. I hadn't cried in days, but underneath my eyes were still purple. My eyes
any more
themselves were
rocks?
bloodshot and looked dull, like I was drunk, but I hadn't had a
My
drop of alcohol
thighs.
since coming to live with my parents. I looked at myself in the mirror and told the
It's
sad
got
sack
hanging
staring back at
thighs.
me,
That's fucked up.
"You are pathetic. You are scared of your own room. You're scared of quiet. You don't deserve to live anymore." I stared hard at myself, turned off the water, and immediately started humming. This time, though, it wasn't the song from my childhood. It was
The final
Beethoven's
boss is
Fifth.
Skeleton Boulder.
I hummed it to myself the whole time I was cleaning out my ears with the Q-tips. But as I was doing it, I realized that the tune
I
had
miss
changed.
Blowjob Week.
It wasn't any song I knew from anywhere else. It was just one line, repeated over and over. I couldn't stop. I began singing the words that went along with the slow tune. Hablarás,
Nope. Nope.
entrarás
I noped right out of
en
there.
silencio
Pussy lint.
eterno
Pussy Lint Eternal.
que se
Guess that's tomorrow's stream name.
te rodeará.
Pussy Lint
I looked
Eternal.
back up at myself.
That's a
to
good.
find the
That's a good
person staring
everything
back at me
name.
with
That's
tears
just
streaming
changed my
down his
life.
face and telling me,
My
"I
guild
wanna
name.
die. I wanna die. I wanna die. Me quiero morir. Me quiero morir. Me quiero morir.
Nope.
Mátame. Mátame. Kill me. Kill me."
Kill me. Need
As if under a
you
trance,
kill me, bro?
I turned and placed my hand on the bathroom
Wave
doorknob.
59. We need some
Turned it. I looked to my right, knowing what I would see.
pussy lint.
The door that I had seen before was now right in front of me.
Oh god, it gets
It was
incredible. I
iron
wish I
and
saved
very
up.
old.
Yeah, save up.
It was studded with bolts and had one of those giant metal rings as a handle, with
Pussy
an old
lint
keyhole above it.
eternal.
At the top of the door, there was an engraving written in 3 lines, each line changing languages. The first, in I think Italian, the second in Spanish,
Fucking Italian.
and the third in English. La siante ogne
He made this shit
speranza.
up just to show he knows some
Voi
languages.
ci entrante.
Just like how people find the reason.
Hablastes lo que deseabais. I will help. Italian is close to Spanish, and it seems that I've heard the phrase before. The first line says something about hope,
You're a low
and
class
then addresses
saddler.
those who enter. The second line says, "Ye have spoken what ye desired." And then finally, "I will help."
Oh fuck.
There was an orange light coming out from under the door and streaming out of the keyhole. I walked towards it,
Are you
considered the
streaming?
message on the door and what it meant, and grabbed the ring,
Do it, do it, do it, do it.
and pulled hard. Dust flew up from the floor and heat flew back at my face as I proceeded into the
Got
dusty
that
room.
dusty palsy.
I looked around as the dust settled, and I saw the source of the orange light to my right. It was a burning fireplace shaped like a doorframe with a brilliant hissing flame. The warmth was both comforting and terrifying at the same time. Written in burning iron letters above the flame were the words "Silencio Eterno." The flame was mesmerizing,
Don't.
but far more interesting than the flame door
Fuck.
was what was to my left.
I didn't bring
To my
enough
left
rocks
was a
here.
wrinkled, old Hispanic woman. She was sitting in a rocking chair with knitting needles in her hands, a skein of yarn in her feet. Her emaciated fingers were moving quickly as
I'm
she
gonna
continued
lose this
knitting.
shit.
She lifted her eyes from the yarn
Lifted her scare.
and smiled a toothless smile at me. Her eyes were glazed over with the cloudiness that comes from people who have become blind.
Don't fuck me
She
up.
never stopped knitting. I heard only the hissing and crackling of the fire. the scraping of needles.
Look
and
how
a faint
little that
rocking from her
does.
chair before she addressed me, saying,
I gotta lose
"I
this.
need you." She paused after this, as if collecting her thoughts before she began singing, and silently hissing because of her missing teeth.
You're a terrific actor.
Yo, I know a lot of languages. Listen to this spooky ass story now. Do you believe me? Pussy lint, pussy lint, pussy lint, pussy lint.
I had to spend it
That
all.
meant you spoke.
Is it legit
you entered,
Macintosh?
and the eternal silence you decided to surround.
She lifted her skirt, showing a toothless
Continue.
smile.
This time speaking in English.
Oh, mercy.
I have heard your tears.
Okay.
I
I
have
have
heard your words. I will help.
This is that V Monroe
but
guy.
only if you want me to. I have eternal silence to
Okay.
offer you. You fear silence now, but you will learn to love it. I fear
You fucking love
darkness,
it. You're fucking craving
but
this.
now I see more than ever. I am the guardian of eternal silence. But if you desire, you can return here, go to the door, and have eternal, peaceful silence. Your time to enter is not now,
Don't die.
but I have a gift before you depart. Ven para acá, mijo.
I went to her, as she instructed. Something in me trusted her, trusted that she
Pendejo.
knew what was best for me. Her soft, wrinkled hands
Yeah,
took mine.
dude.
The coldness
Don't let those
from her
green
needles on
fucks
my
stop
hands
ya.
contrasted the heat I felt from everywhere else. She moved her hands up my arms, across my neck, and up to my face,
Do me.
where she felt my eyes, my nose,
Good.
my lips,
Mike the
and then my
liar.
ears. She pulled her hands away and said,
Remember, mijo, I am the guardian of eternal
The galaxy.
silence.
Okay, like
with those words, she slammed her hands into my head, the needles penetrating my ear
fuck
canal.
this guy. You could.
I felt
fuck this guy.
excruciating pain. I heard myself scream, then a loud pop. And then I heard nothing.
Oh, this is the final wave?
Silence.
Yeah, just boulders.
The old woman disappeared from before my eyes, and suddenly I found myself in the bathroom,
All
looking at
boulders.
myself in the mirror. The person in the mirror had his mouth open and face contorted in a look of unbearable pain. I'm sure he
Near
was screaming, but
Kajit, so.
I heard nothing. Blood was trickling from
23
his ears,
rocks. That's not gonna be enough.
and the ends of the Q-tips were barely visible, poking out of each ear. I reached up and pulled out each bloody Q-tip one
Stream's
at a time.
probably gonna be over. It looks
collapsed to
like
the
we
floor,
beat the game.
Screamed and screamed, but heard nothing.
Boop.
My parents
Oh,
ran
look
into
how
the
strong it
bathroom.
is.
Their mouths moved, and what I could imagine were words. Picked me up and carried me out.
That's a.
I'd finally come back from the hospital. They were unable to restore my hearing, and they had me on psychiatric observation for I don't know how long. I'm in my room and spend much of my time staring at that wall, contemplating the silence. I'm
I can
not
give you
alone.
eternal silence.
I can hear the comforting words of the old woman. I know that all I have to do is go to the mirror and say what I desire. The door will be there, and she will be there, and
I
help me
love her
surround
now.
myself with peaceful, eternal silence.
Keep doing her, bud. Oh yeah, keep them all behind this thing. Cool story. Wow. That was all you, huh? Don't fuck me. Charge a fucking horse in there, bro. I'm fucking Z's, bro. Oh, don't you fuck me up. Yeah, kill other mighty ones so it fucking... Yeah, yes. Yes. Ah! You almost ran in there. my spody toady. I might not win. That green guy's gonna fucking absorb. Okay, good. Today's GOG is Zork. Oh, good. Good. You fucking... Contact a proctor doctor immediately. Fuck. Infinity Rocks is somehow... Yeah, she can go under. Good! Yo, I'm the best. This is what it is. This is what it is. Game accomplished. Accomplished times 1. Difficult. Game accomplished. Very good. Music, yes. Sound, yes. Okay. Game accomplished. I would like to continue, please. Persuaded. He does birthdays. Oh, it's some fucking clown thing. Bye, Otis Gyrie. Master storyteller. Okay, we want that good shit.
Reflections
Reflection.
by Megan J. Meehan. Narrated by Otis Gyrie.
Otis Gyrie, motherfucker.
Peter first saw the
laid a
girl
man
3
down
days
in the
after
dirt.
she died. She was clearly reflected in the bathroom mirror, staring at him scornfully while he brushed his unruly black hair. Peter screamed and spun around, but she was already gone. Then his mother was there, holding him, soothing him, and reassuring him that it
Get
was
those rocks,
all
girl.
over now and that everything would be okay.
This is white Morgan Freeman.
Peter didn't believe a word of it.
Otis Gyrie.
Abby had drowned right in front of his eyes. They had been playing down by the creek, which was actually more akin to a deep lake. Although
this
they
very
were
loud?
not supposed to go near the area, Peter and Abby spent nearly every hot summer day
Oh yeah,
there.
don't press escape. Every
The
time
lake,
you escape.
which he and Abby referred to
Well,
as
don't.
the watering hole, was the best place to
Oh, what
spend
is
an
this?
afternoon pretending
Time it.
and dreaming and fending off the oppressive midsummer swell.
I had fucking storytellers come
Few people
and read
actually
stories.
knew about the backwoods
Yeah, it's fucked up.
location, and even fewer would fight through.
We don't
the
have money to
woods'
teach
thick
these kids.
foliage
Just
to
get
there.
a local maniac
Thus,
to
it was
speak to our
his and
child.
Abby's domain. Their parents repeatedly warned them that the watering hole was dangerous and instructed them to steer clear of it, but they didn't listen. They both could swim, the lake was calm, and it wasn't as if any
They all thought they were
alligators
really
had
amazing.
left.
Yeah, fucking I had that
Nothing they
too.
assumed could possibly go wrong.
Fuck that.
Then, one day, Abby slipped and sank down into the murky waters of the Black Lake. Panic had overcome her, and
Panic.
she lost her ability
Help.
to think rationally or apparently to
It says
swim.
dick damage now.
Peter had been right there with her, but he couldn't remember anything that had happened.
We need some gyros.
1 minute she was there, and then the next
Gyroscope.
moment she was suddenly gone. He must have tried to help, but he couldn't remember.
New game.
It was as if he hadn't been there at all. The doctors said he was in shock.
The doctor.
Forgetting was one way that the mind defended itself from severe trauma, especially a young 12-year-old mind like his.
Wake up.
The explanation was one way to solve the mystery of how, 10 minutes after Abby went under, Peter had shown up at his front door soaking wet and slack-faced. He was unable to explain to his mother what had happened, but she suspected trouble as soon as she saw his soaked
Okay,
swim
done with stream.
trunks.
Even Jairi can't save us.
It was Peter's mother who had found Abby's
Why
body
did you
floating
stay?
face down in the center of the lake. Abby's
Why
remains
was
went to the
Jairi?
morgue, and Peter went to the hospital.
Oh, it's just like
Although
endless.
he remembered nothing of the event itself or his
That's
mother's panicked phone call to 911, he remembered the hospital visit perfectly.
Look how many of
By
these
then,
characters are
he
Jewish
had come out of
people.
his shock enough to talk and cry, and finally express dismay over what had transpired. He remembered the doctor's
Where's
questions,
Padme?
and he answered them numbly, mostly just repeating himself over and over.
You fucked.
He insisted that he didn't know what had happened or why it had happened. He couldn't believe Abby was
Yeah,
gone.
you're fucked. Sorry, Joe.
They had been
Yeah.
swimming, slashing, laughing, and then she had just, sank? Had a heart attack? He didn't know. The death was quickly ruled as accidental, and Peter was allowed to go home that night. His father drove along, stony-faced, as his mother wept in the passenger seat, and Peter stared out of the back window, dazed. The mild bruises on his body throbbed from the
Mild
examination.
bruises?
The doctor declared that he'd probably received them trying to help Abby.
Don't fuck
That
me.
served as some comfort. He had not simply allowed his best friend to die without even trying to save her. Peter insisted on sleeping in his own room that night. He wanted to be alone, despite his mother's pleas that
Oh,
he
like
allows
what?
either her or his father or both of them
$1,000
to stay
bucks.
with him.
Fucking like what?
Peter
Smash
thought
my
he would
asshole.
be all right until he had a terrible nightmare. In his dream, Abby was still floating alone in the lake.
Oh, well, now I'm
fucked
fucked because I spent it all on
Slowly,
frogs and I
her
don't have
body,
any...
stiff, jerky, not lean
The
and
game
limber
ends.
as she had been in life, started moving to the edge of the lake,
I've chewed myself out of
crawling out of the
several
water and
upgrades.
sliding
I
onto land.
fucking bought rocks instead.
Every detail was impeccably vivid. Her wet hair dripped tiny streams along the dirt. Her pale, bloodless skin shone morbidly in the moonlight. Her blackened, rotting fingernails gripped the earth. The thing that had been Abby slithered into the woods along the path towards his house.
Come on, do me.
It, was looking for him,
Shit.
searching, hunting. Peter awoke screaming and crying hysterically. Within seconds his parents were there, comforting him, and as they held him and rocked him, his tears of fear turned to ones of sorrow.
Tears for fears.
He already missed Abby's smile and her companionship. She was a girl, but she didn't mind getting dirty or playing rough or reading comics. She befriended him when no one else had, and now
Would you like
she
to
was
read a
gone
comic
forever.
book with me? No.
His failure to rescue her brought on overwhelming grief, which he knew was his to bear forevermore.
You
Peter's
fucked up
nightmares
forever.
were relentless. Every time he fell asleep, there was a continuation of the same dream. Abby's corpse crawled closer and closer to his house. In his last dream, she reached the house and tapped on his window with flaxen
I've
fingers.
got support shoes.
He awoke with a start, covered in sweat, but there was nothing outside but the night. Now that the bad dream Abby had reached the house, he hoped the nightmare would cease. Then he took a shower to relax, and boom.
And he had a
As soon as
shit.
he emerged from the water and looked in the mirror, he saw her behind him, following him in consciousness for the first time.
Yeah, keep summoning these Jews.
It terrified
One fucking
me
horse
beyond
is gonna come
description
ripping
to
through
see her.
here.
When he was awake, and even as he screamed
You
and
gyrated.
stammered at his parents insistently
yeah,
about what had
fuck.
happened, they simply reassured him that it was a waking dream. Peter wished he could believe them.
Oh,
but
that was
deep
no dream,
down,
that
he
was
knew
real,
it
Peter.
wasn't true. Abby had reached him in his dreams, and now she
Okay,
was
so what if you
reaching
do it-
for him in his waking hours. Peter briefly attended Abby's wake, but not
Oh,
her
you
funeral.
can. Yeah, that's what I wanted.
As soon as he looked down and saw her lying lifelessly
Play
in
from the
stiff,
beginning with all my
rectangular
powers.
coffin,
Like Captain
he
Planet.
choked up and had to be removed. The room had grown cold and stuffy, and he was both grateful
just
and
get all
relieved
rocks.
when his
Yeah,
parents
you're
took him
fucked,
home.
you fucked, you poos.
Subsequently, they steered clear of the funeral, proclaiming that it was too traumatic.
Oh yeah,
to
but
put their
difficulty up
12-year-old son
30%.
through.
So
As
the
far as they were
fucking-
concerned, Abby
Okay.
was gone, and they had to try and move
I'm
forward.
gonna Tarkus this thing.
What Peter's parents didn't know
Peter
was
Pants.
that Abby was everywhere. Peter never got a
Oh,
moment's peace from her presence.
look.
He saw her behind corners, reflected in window panes and puddles.
Jewish
She
physics.
even stared at him from the bottom of drinking glasses. At first, he only saw her.
John
but
Lennon
within
is
a
killed
week,
with
she started
smegma on his
speaking to him,
chest. What
calling
motivated
his name
you
and
to say
begging
such
him
a
to
thing?
come back to her. It sounded like Abby's voice, but there was anger and menace to it. Nothing like the sweet, non-threatening girl he had known. In church, he was told that people went to heaven after they died, unless they were bad.
Unless they were girls.
Maybe Abby had been bad and God sent her to hell. Death had made her insane, and now she blamed him. One thing was of no doubt. Her ghost was after him. It was obvious to Peter that Abby was
All
as
I can say
lonely
for
in
sure
death
is that
as
her
she had
ghost,
been in
her
life
haunted
before
ghost, is
she
trying to
met
fuck
him.
you up.
Now she wanted him to join her wherever she was and keep her company once again.
I will have myself.
In his
killed
mind's
whilst
eye,
fucking
he
your
understood her
corpse.
plan perfectly. She would lure him to her, then drag him down so they could be dead together. She was getting increasingly aggressive. He had seen her in his closet, hiding and whispering to him from behind racks of clothes.
If
One
insanity
night,
is when
as
your
he lay in
brain
his
stops
bed, he felt her
functioning
moving under the
normally, then
mattress,
for
searching
sure
for
when you
him.
die, you're insane.
Although he saw her constantly, she only came to him when he was alone. Thus, he made it his mission to remain by his parents' sides at all times. He insisted on sleeping on the floor of their bedroom. When they left a room, he followed. If he had to go to the bathroom or take a shower, one of them had to
This
stay.
narrator has the voice of a man who's
Even
been
with
drained
his
of all
parents
his
watching
passion
over
for
him,
this world.
Peter absolutely refused
My
to
oldest
take a
diary.
bath.
Perhaps I'll tell
Whenever he
stories
was
to
submerged
children.
in the water, he felt Abby's fingertips
I bet
probing
he's in Toronto
up from
too.
the
Everything
drain,
is.
brushing against his
Fucking-
ankles.
Okay.
His parents, particularly
The
his
end.
father, were worried about his constant need for company. They took him to psychologists who badgered him with questions about his thoughts and feelings. Peter didn't mind. He was safe. He still saw Abby. She often glared at him from the ornamental mirror behind the doctor's chair, but he dared not tell the professionals that.
Dear Abby.
Sometimes people who said such things got locked up in a padded cell. If he got locked up in a padded cell, he would be alone and totally at the thing that used to be Abby's mercy. Peter was an only child, and he enjoyed a close relationship with his parents. They were his constant companions, allies, and protectors. He never imagined Abby or her spirit could extend to them. But Peter was only a boy, and there were a great many things he did not know. At first it was small incidents. His mother lost her balance and nearly hit her head on the pavement while walking back to the car after leaving the grocery store. Then his father's hand slipped while he was using an electric knife to carve up dinner, and he needed to get stitches. Although
Yeah, I'm the
these things happened
best.
in close proximity to each other, Peter didn't connect them to Abby until the car accident.
Connect to his balls.
January came in full force, and it brought snow in massive quantities. It stacked up 4 feet high and kept coming, turning the world into a landscape of ice.
That isn't actually
Peter's
insanity,
parents
though.
owned
I don't
an
think
SUV,
Einstein
something
even
of a
said that.
necessity in the winter.
Insanity's doing the
And
same thing
weather
repeatedly,
didn't prevent
expecting different
them from
results.
going into town to do their errands. One day, as they were standing in line at
just
the
a neat
supermarket,
thing
the
to
snow
say to
started coming
people.
down in heavy drifts. By the time Peter and his parents piled into their vehicle and headed home, the streets were nearly invisible.
I want to see a chort.
Peter's mother sat
Chores
rigidly in
are-
the front seat, anxiously
see
watching the
some
road
chores.
as his father cautiously navigated through the near whiteout. Peter was the most relaxed
You
one of the
cannot
three
even
as he
hurt me.
sat in
I'm
the
the
back
best.
seat and nibbled on a candy bar. He was with his family. He was fine. Abby appeared out of nowhere. She stood in the middle of the road, still wearing the bathing suit she had worn on the day she died. Despite the freezing temperatures, she was dripping wet. Peter's parents didn't see her. Before Peter could scream,
Okay, let's
Abby held
try
her
one of these
arms out and
mothers.
touched the hood of the slow-moving SUV.
The less
The
bro
car
talks, the better
instantly
the
spun
stream
out of
is.
control.
Brody, it's your mom.
Peter's
You have to
father
wake
turned
up.
the wheel fanatically
I don't
as
believe
You've
you.
been
the
asleep
vehicle
for
careened
6
off the
years
pavement
dreaming about
and landed in
Sparta
a
killing
snowbank.
creepy skeletons.
No damage was
You
done,
have to
and no one
wake
was
up.
hurt.
That's what
But
put
Peter
me
saw
in
Abby
the
smiling
sleep, and it's what I see
menacingly at
every
him through the
second of
rearview
the
mirror
sleep.
as his father reversed the vehicle and
Bam!
continued the journey home. It was then that Peter realized he needed to face her, for his parents' sake, if not his own. That night, for the first time in months, he told his parents that he wanted to sleep in his own room. His father was supportive, but his mother was suspicious of her son's newfound bravery, especially after the frightening incident merely hours before. "Are you positive?" she questioned. Peter assured her that he was. That night, as the snow fell heavily outside, Peter confirmed that his parents were asleep and safe. Then he went back to his room and faced the window.
Insanity is quoting
Abby
Far
was
Cry 3 and
outside, as
expecting
usual,
people to
tapping
give a
on the
shit.
glass with her finger.
Far Cry
She was
3
so
had the
close
best
to him
rating.
that she could see the irises of her eyes. Once they had been a beautiful
Oh, was that the
bright
one
blue. Now
when
they were
the
black and
BAFTAs
emotionless.
were on for video games? Anthony
Peter trembled with fear as he put on his warm coat and
posted a
boots.
thing on Twitter
He
about
fully believed
main
that he
character
was about
looking
to
at his
die
bloody
the thing
hands,
that used
literally
to be
saying out
Abby's
loud,
hands.
"What have I become?"
But strangely,
And then
the
Ryan
idea
Davis
of freezing still bothered
said a
him.
thing to him.
Once bundled, he took a deep breath and opened the window. He expected her to attack him right away.
I
Perhaps
wondered
rip
what
his
game that
neck out
was.
with her long fingernails
It's not,
and then drink up his blood. But no such thing happened.
The Last of Us, right?
Instead, she simply stood still and
What
watched
have I
him
become?
climb out of the house. Then she turned and walked into the woods with that stiff and jerky gait of hers. Peter followed. She led him to the lake. It was now completely frozen over, but the sight of it sent a wave of terror through him.
Yeah,
He had not been there since
yes.
Abby's accident. The thing that once
Ryan
was
Reynolds said
Abby
it.
walked out to the lake's center, which was right around the very spot where she had drowned. Then she turned and beckoned to Peter, who stood shivering on the
Oh,
embankment.
Spec Ops?
Tentatively, he stepped onto
What
the
have I
ice and
become?
met with his departed companion. As soon as he was next to her, she spoke. He was relieved to hear Abby's voice, not ranting and raving, but curious,
Yeah, shut
maybe
the
a bit
fuck
sad,
up.
and
with your
undeniably
voice.
his Abby. "I miss you," she declared, loneliness lacing her words. "I miss you too," Peter gushed emotionally. "You are my best friend, Abby. I'm really lonely without you. I miss you every single day. I'd give anything to have you back. Why did you do it?"
Why'd you do it?
Do what? I can't remember any of it. Honestly, I can't. I wish I could, but I can't. I don't understand how you could have drowned. You're a better swimmer than me. I'm stronger than you were, so I should have been able to save you. I could have gotten you to the
Cosplay as
shore.
Leo.
He couldn't finish his sentence. He was tongue-tied and his gut wrenched. His words were choked and
He was
blocked by deep and
asshole-tied.
seemingly ceaseless sobs.
Oh, it's maximum.
Then Abby turned her face
Like
directly
what?
to
Like what?
his,
Like
and
what?
Peter
Like-
immediately noticed that her eyes were her own pretty light blue, not the startling black holes he had seen in the reflections. Aside
Yeah, we're
from the
good.
bluish tint to her once tanned skin, she looked and
Rupees
acted
in her drink.
exactly like the Abby he had known. Not vindictive or emotionless or soulless, but sweet and loyal and good. Tears streamed openly down his face. Abby took pity on him as soon as she saw
Oh yeah,
the
shit, that
extent of
contest.
his genuine torment.
Oh, I didn't submit my thing. I
"I'll
probably
help
didn't
you,"
win.
she
Wow,
crooned.
I wanted to win the Twitch
Gently,
contest.
she stood her arms around him. She was surprisingly warm. Actually, everything was
Sixth,
warm.
seventh.
Hot.
Wow.
Scorching.
Hot damn.
Peter suddenly realized it was July again. The lake sparkled
fucked
blue, and his and Abby's laughter filled the air. They had delighted in sneaking off to the Forbidden Lake since it made them feel like rebels. Sometimes they even pretended to be
Cosplays
Bonnie and
Galactus.
Clyde.
How do you know about that?
That's what they had been doing on that fateful Monday. Abby had been playing the part of Bonnie, prancing around the muddy marsh and showing off
They
her
know
long
too
legs,
much
pretending
sometimes.
to distract bank clerks. So
Yeah.
Peter, Clyde, could take
Too
off with all
much.
the loot in the vaults. Then she had given the game up and gone for a dip. "It's too hot for this," she declared while submerging herself in the cooling water. "Besides, Bonnie and Clyde happened like 200 years ago. We should think of something else." Peter followed her into the waist-deep water and put his arms around her. To his surprise, she quickly shoved him off. "What are you doing?" She sounded as outraged as a nun in a brothel.
I'm gonna get fucked.
"I want to kiss you again." "Don't." "Why not? We did it last week. Remember? Friday?" Truthfully, Friday had been an accidental incident which actually started on Tuesday. On Tuesday, they had been playing Bonnie and Clyde, and after a successful robbery, Peter had leaned over and kissed Abby lightly on the lips. It was a purely spur-of-the-moment
Let him
action,
boulder.
which had surprised both of them, but nothing more. Quickly,
wanna get
they had
strong.
gone back to playing as if nothing had happened. Yet on Wednesday, they started talking about Abby's older sister, Helen, who was an
I wanna
understudy
get
for the
strong.
part of Juliet in the local theater's presentation of Shakespeare's famous play. If the lead actress gets sick, Helen will have to play the role, and at the end, she'll have to kiss a boy. Abby reported this information as if it was the most scandalous thing she had ever heard. "I'd be too scared, especially on a stage in front of a whole audience."
You also gotta fuck up.
Then the discussion turned to wondering if kissing, real kissing, was
Oh,
hard to do.
girl.
Somehow, by the end of the day, they had tried it. It seemed that both of them liked it because on Thursday
I feel like
they
every
practiced
viewer that's
again.
lost is a viewer that
On
will
Friday,
never
they
return.
repeated the process, this time lying down on the sandy, marshy embankment.
Don't come in
Weekends
here if
were
you don't want the
reserved
good
for
stuff
family, at
going
least
on
in
to your
Peter's
body.
household, so they didn't see each other on Saturday or
Okay,
Sunday.
yeah, let's...
Peter had eagerly awaited Monday so that he could touch Abby again. Previously, Peter had regarded
Previously
Abby
on
as
Peter.
a tomboy from a rough family. She climbed trees, spit, and knew how to defend herself from anyone who riled her. Yet she was also thoughtful and funny. She was an outcast because she was poor, and he was an outcast because he was short
This
and
is
skinny.
for the best.
They both came up against snickers and jeers and constant exclusion from practically everything. In each
There,
other, they
but for
found
the grace of
solace.
God, go I.
Even though the friendship was prime ammunition for bullies, they were able to withstand anything as long as they had each other to talk
Black
to.
more to top of that.
Their vivid imaginations
Oh yeah,
connected
use out your new...
and combined
use out
in
your
the
spells.
ultimate sharing of minds. They allowed each other to escape, and for years that had been their only desire. Recently, however, Peter had started to notice how pretty Abby was. Her wide eyes, her dark hair, even her nice long legs.
Fat.
Normally, her body was well hidden in the baggy hand-me-down clothes that she was given by her sisters, who were all older and at least 3 sizes bigger than she was. Yet, in the summer, Peter had instantly seen how nice her legs were as she paraded around in shorts and swimwear. And so, that Monday, he had yearned to feel her lips on his once again. Abby
feel her
shifted
lips.
uncomfortably under the weight of his gaze. "We shouldn't have done that. I think lying down while kissing can be dangerous. Mommy's always screaming about staying away from boys or we'll end up like Susie. She had no idea how much time I even spend with you." Susie, he should have known. Abby was the youngest child in a family of 7 girls. Susie, the second oldest, got pregnant when she was 15 and now lived with her drunk
fuck it.
husband and bratty son in a shack on the bad side of town. "I don't think it's the same thing," he protested. He was, in fact, pretty sure
Witches.
it wasn't the same thing, but there was an underlying connection somehow. Abby shrugged. "Either way, it's
Yo,
better
dog,
not to,
what it
just in
is."
case." She turned and headed toward the lake's deeper depths, and something inside of Peter snapped. He seized her and pulled her to him, roughly running his hands through her hair. "Come on, one kiss." "No, let go of me, Peter. You're hurting me. Just one. We're too young for you to be
Okay,
like
so he's
Susie.
dreaming...
We're too young,
He
period.
went swimming with
Stop
his
it."
friend and she died, and
She
he's
kicked at
dreaming
him,
about
and
her.
her feet connected painfully with his shins.
He's
Peter
trying to
released his
boobies
grip,
her.
yelping in agony as Abby ran deeper into the water. Cradling his injured leg,
Water.
anger boiled up inside of him. Ignoring the throes and throbs and hurt,
Oh yeah,
he swam
7'9".
after
I'm
her.
afraid of
He
investing
was bigger
in that.
and stronger than she was, and he caught up with her quickly. They were now swimming in the middle of the lake where the water was too deep to feel the muddy bottom. "Come on, Abby," he pleaded. "Don't be a bitch." "Don't call me that."
Don't be
Rage
mean.
consumed them both at once. She took a swing at him. He retaliated by grabbing her. They struggled against
so he
each
killed
other,
her?
splashing and kicking and shouting in a violent embrace that was not at all like the pleasant cuddle he had been hoping for. They tussled for several minutes before Abby got still.
Oh yeah, just try these. Nope.
Peter assumed she had given up and was playing possum. Then he realized that she was under the water.
He fucked her up.
She stared blankly up
He
at
was
him
the
with the
one.
same empty glaze he saw in the eyes of dead fish at the supermarket. He spent several minutes trying to wake her up to no
Your
avail.
glaze.
He had been screaming shrilly, but then he seemed to tune everything out.
To tuna.
Stony-faced, he emerged from the water and started walking down the woodsy path towards his house, leaving Abby's corpse floating listlessly
I heard that
in
fucker.
the center of the water.
Otis.
The doctors had been right. He panicked and set off a defense mechanism in his brain. He had blocked everything out and was unaware of what he had done. No wonder she wanted to reach him. He had taken her life himself. He had murdered Abby. "Abby!" Peter wailed aloud. The awful realization felt as if it was ripping him
why did you
inside
select?
to
I don't think you
shreds,
read
and
the
he
story in
wished
advance.
He too was dead. "Oh God, Abby! I remember.
I remember.
I'm sorry, Abby. I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry, Abby." It was cold.
You emote so
The warmth
eloquently.
of the world was suddenly replaced by a biting chill. The air was no longer still and muggy, but gutsy and freezing. Its inconsolable wails mixed with his own. Peter fell to his knees and thought he had heard his mother's voice as a sharp cracking sound filled his ears. Suddenly he was falling, descending down into the cold and the wet and the darkness.
Abby!
Dr. Auburn stared down at the unconscious boy who was lying stock still in the hospital bed. It had been unpredictable.
I'm
for a
Rainbow
while.
fucking
Hypothermia
Randolph.
had set in, and they nearly lost him a few times, but now he was in stable condition.
Fucker.
The machines he was hooked up to monitored him, and their readings indicated to the medical staff that he would make a full recovery. The boy was lucky. His mother had woken up and realized that he was out of the house. Instantly, she had known where he had gone, and had been level-headed enough not to leave the house without her cell
That sound
phone.
like Bubbles.
She contacted 911 as soon as she saw him standing on the frozen lake. The emergency personnel arrived seconds after he had fallen through the broken
My
ice.
dick is too hard
In
for
the
this right
ambulance, he had come to enough to repeatedly
Do it.
declare, "I did it." The boy's worried parents huddled together next to the bed. Dr. Auburn knew that his patient
fuck my
was
shit
Peter,
up.
the same boy who had lost his best
Oh,
friend
here it
6
is.
months earlier. The poor girl had drowned
You
in the
fucked
same
up.
spot. Undoubtedly, the boy was traumatized from witnessing such a thing. Obviously, he had made his way out to the lake in what was seemingly a suicide attempt, a result of misplaced guilt.
Committed suicide.
The poor kid probably believed that he had killed the girl who had been his one and only friend. The strain of the initial accident's aftermath had affected his parents as well. Upon being brought to the hospital, his mother insisted that Abby's voice had woken her and told her that Peter was in trouble. Abby, the dead girl,
disregard all that.
allegedly told her to go to the lake and call
end.
for help immediately. When Peter's mother checked his
I like
room and
video
found
games.
his bed empty, she listened to the voice. The doctor was sympathetic. He gave her a Valium to calm her nerves and rechecked the boy's chart. Finding nothing amiss,
It was
he
a
gave the
girl.
parents a wan smile, reassuring them that their son would live.
I hate to be the one
On
to
the
tell
way
you
out
this,
of the
but
room, he
your
reflected
son,
on the irony of fatal accidents.
he's a daughter.
Death was often quick for victims. It was the survivor's psychological agony that lingered.
Nope. Disregard these. Disregard these. That's it. I got gyrated in to listen to that thing. Yeah, girl. Oh, warehouse. By Otis Gyrie. Okay, I'm allowed. Yeah.
The Red Light in the Warehouse
The red light.
by Jimmy Giuliano, narrated by Otis Gyrie.
Gyrie.
Toby was a born liar. When his parents got divorced, he told everyone that he lived with his dad on the weekends at a llama
On the
farm,
moon.
and that he had a water slide that went from his bedroom window to a pool. We were gullible 10-year-olds, but even then, we all decided that Toby was full of shit. But Toby stuck by his story, and none of us were ever invited to his dad's house, so we could never call him out on it. It was almost admirable in a way, that type of devotion to lying. So, even though I admired Toby in a weird way, I also never trusted a single word he said. Not as kids on the playground, and not in the few times we'd spoken in the last 15 years. Toby was always fun to hang out with, but there was always this distance between us.
You're right.
I've known him for a long time now, but I've never felt
Tickle
like
Fingers by Otis Gyrie. Oh, it's a short one.
Tickle Fingers
Tickle
by
Fingers.
Adam Kearney.
Abby.
Narrated by Otis Gyrie.
By
When I
Otis
was a
Gyrie.
boy,
He does
my
this because he
papa
likes
would
doing
tuck me
this.
into
It doesn't
bed,
sound like that
turn
at
off the
all.
light, and then tell me, "Now stay in bed, you hear?
Damn
If
it.
you are up and about during the night, Mr. Tickle Fingers will come and get you." Then, sometimes, if I appeared too alarmed at the thought, he would grab me and tickle me and make mocking, monstrous sounds as I laughed and squirmed. But when he shut the door and I lay down to sleep, his words would echo and amplify themselves in my young mind, which conjured visions of a beastly ghoul. I envisioned Mr. Tickle Fingers as a stooped, ancient man, the wrinkled folds of his jowls dangling to and fro as he moved. His eyes were beady and black beneath the brim of his battered top hat, and his jagged teeth were always blood red. But it was his fingers that truly scared me and kept me still in my bed throughout the night, fingers that tapped upon his round belly as he waited for his next victim. They were long and multi-jointed, able to independently move in all directions, and
His
once
fingers
they
can
grabbed
move?
you were helpless, caught in his grasp,
The web.
gasping for air as he
just
coerced
upgrade,
your
please.
last breaths from your body with those broken,
Breasts.
bent
Man,
digits.
I miss those titties.
Such was my fear of him that I never once arose from my bed in the middle of the night.
David is greater than us.
Were I to awake, I huddled up and kept my eyes closed, sure that Mr. Ticklefingers was there, in the dark, in the corner of my room, his fingers patiently tapping upon his gut, just waiting for me to arise. I never took the chance.
He looks like Sam Fisher.
As I grew older, I left behind my childhood
his
fears
truthful
for
eyes.
more practical worries, and forgot all about Mr. Ticklefingers.
Doobie.
I had not thought of him in years until just last week. While I slept soundly as a child and a young man, the ravages
child
of
and a young
time
man.
and poor living have taken their toll upon me in recent years. I have grown fatter and consequently have
Fat as
trouble
shit,
sleeping,
dude.
often waking many times during the night, choking and wheezing. It was on one such night last week that I arose to fix myself a glass of water. I have become so sensitive in recent years that I cannot tolerate any light whatsoever when I sleep, so my house is entirely
You've
dark,
grown soft.
lit only by occasional moonlight creeping in through the blinds over my windows. I have learned to navigate it without turning on the lights, as doing so generally ruins my chances at falling back asleep for a short while, until my eyes adjust once more to the darkness. So
what, like
I
40
was
seconds?
walking down the narrow hall which leads from my bedroom to the kitchen, feeling my way, when I heard a faint tapping sound from behind me. And for the first time in decades, Mr. Ticklefingers sprang unbidden to the forefront of my thoughts.
Yeah, I got
At first
fat
I
and
laughed,
have difficulty
fondly
sleeping.
remembering my papa, who was always kind to me. But
Well, that
then I
part's false,
remembered
though,
the visage of the gruesome specter who so often filled the dead hours
This is giving me
of my youthful nights
PTSD.
with dread. I shivered as I felt for
Post-traumatic
the
stress
wall
traumatic.
and took another step, eager to slake my thirst and return to bed.
I'd like to slake my
And
thirst.
then I realized I was still laughing. A sudden, sharp pain made me double over as I clenched at my sides, and in my mind's eye I could see his
How loud do
gnarled
you snore and
fingers
wheeze in your
moving
sleep?
upon me.
The guy 2
I felt
floors
his
up
bloody
comes down
breath
and
upon the
complains.
nape of my neck as I tried to steady
Yo,
myself.
shut your
No
ass.
avail. I fell to the floor, howling with laughter and terror. Tears streamed down my cheeks.
The horror is
as
that he
my laughter
laughs
quickened.
too hard?
I felt this great weight pressing upon me, heard the pucker of his lips as
Oh
he
shit, I
sucked
did
the
that. I
breath
almost
from my
fainted a
lungs.
couple days ago from
I
laughing
rolled
at
over
that thing.
onto my stomach and tried to crawl as his knobby fingers prodded me. I knew the light switch.
Tickle
was
Finger is the
but
guy
a
who
few
touched
feet
my
away.
prostate, yeah.
If I could rise and reach it, at least I could face my assailant. With
This
a
guy's
great
too eloquent
guffaw,
for
I heaved forward, choking and gasping as I giggled, until, with one last push, I found the switch and turned on the light. Finally free of the smoldering laughter, I panted,
The smoldering hot
hyperventilating as I looked
laughter.
around at the empty hall. I have since realized that it
Sensory.
is much like when one tells you not to think of an elephant, and you cannot help but picture one. So it is with Mr. Ticklefingers. In my childhood, I avoided him by staying in bed out of his reach. Later, I forgot him entirely, robbing him of the power to visit me. It was only when I remembered him that night that he struck. Now, I do not rise from bed, no matter the disturbance to my sleep. Perhaps
Where's that
it
go?
was
Oh,
all
yeah.
in my mind, and I did
I
it
want
to
these
myself.
gyres.
I think.
So close.
An aging man giving in to delusion. It does not matter. I can no more keep him from my thoughts than I could keep from
I
laughing
need some
in his
gyro
grasp.
money.
And when I wake, snoring myself out of my slumber, there he is again, in the shadows, waiting for me to rise. I am certain
Just make a
of it.
macro that presses that.
So, I bid you to sleep well. And, should you wake in the middle of the night, or
Don't
hear
get
a strange tapping sound behind you, try not to think of this story.
This is a
If you do,
testonation.
This is
Try not to laugh.
Try not to think of this
You
story.
may not be able to stop.
Whoa. The Enchanted Snow Forest. Oh, Fantasy Children, you're a loser.
Any way you want it, that's the way you need it. Any way you want it. Da do da 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 do da 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 do. She was alone, I never knew what good love could do. Then we
The
touched, then we
Whippoorwill
sang
in the
about
Mist.
tickle finger things
By John
all
Crawford.
night.
Narrated by Otis Gyro.
Da do 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 do.
This is where I left the army.
He does an accent.
Out in the mist. As I pulled into the small dirt parking lot that marked County Road 7, the headlights of the new Impala my father bought me as a graduation present held the darkness
If you ever
of the
get fat,
fresh
you're just fat
Mississippi
forever,
This
yeah.
is not a
summer night at
testonation.
bay.
What is it?
The
Help!
song on the car radio ended, and the rich baritone voice of the disc jockey announced that the previous song had been Walk Like a Man by the Four Seasons. He then quickly transitioned into
You gonna
the
talk
latest
about the whole
developments
story,
that
or-
were coming out of Vietnam. I began to check my hair and the red bow tie of my tuxedo at the rearview mirror to ensure everything was
Tuxedo.
perfect. It was prom night after
What else?
all,
What else?
and
What
my
else? What's good?
special
What's
girl
good?
had been waiting in the shade of the wide old oak, alone since sunset. She would always wait for me now. She would never leave, and I loved her for that. The aching in my hands was a dull, constant reminder of our
Oh, I can't
outing
afford a
that
thing.
afternoon.
It'll be a cool fight.
Sometimes Amy made me mad, and I'd lose control
I know
of
it would.
myself. But she always forgave me after. She knew I couldn't help it. For the
I
life
can't
of
help
me,
it,
I
I'll
couldn't
kill
remember
ya.
what we had argued about earlier. Something about going to the prom
Oh,
with
tits
Bobby
gyrate.
Dixon. Something silly like
Old
that.
tits gyrate.
Amy liked to
Down by
press
the
my
knees.
buttons. Liked it a lot, in fact. And when I put my hands around her throat and she saw how serious I was and calmed down
I'm
quickly,
serious, okay? I'm strangling
she
you. I'll
even
kill you.
decided to lie down under our old oak. I told her I was sorry. if
Are
I
you
hurt
legitimately
her.
having
And
fun
even
right
though
now?
she
No,
didn't
it's like
answer
the
me after we made love
nymphomaniac
under
thing.
a
They're
sky
compelled to have
starred
sex
with
and they
pink
don't
and
enjoy
gold
it.
and tangerine
They just have to
hues,
sex
left
people.
by
I
a
have
sun
to
that
play
was
this
slowly
game.
dying behind the horizon, somewhere a whippoorwill began to sing, and I knew she forgave me. She looked peaceful, lying there in the wild flowers under the last light of the day, in her new white prom dress, like an angel. I reached for the glove box, my hand blindly fumbling through the clutter, until it found the corsage I had left Amy to pick up. I had ordered the corsage special the week before, a white oleander to match her prom dress. I
can't trust this woman to stay here and not get killed.
Archaeologist who has discovered a lost
My mom
relic
is a
from
raging
forgotten
whore liar
world.
and broad. I need
I took a
advice.
deep
This
breath
is where I submit
and
the
one
AIDS
last look in
request.
the rearview mirror
Submit the
before
AIDS?
opening the door and stepping out
That's
into the
fucked up.
still of the night. The moon was full and pale and cast a ghastly silver light across the landscape of the
Yeah,
field,
just witches.
making the old oak where Amy waited look like a shadowy sentinel
Like
waiting
shit.
in the night. A dark omen silhouetted against the
I wish I
ethereal
bought
light
that
of the
rock.
full moon. A shiver went up my spine. Maybe it was the sight of how something so beautiful in the day could look so dangerous
If you die in New
and
Game Plus.
foreboding in the darkness.
Okay, the stream is over the second I
Or
die.
perhaps it was just the coolness of the night in contrast to the heat of the day.
Incognito.
It got that way sometimes in Mississippi. Hot June days fell into cool nights that
By the
produced a
banks of the
mist that
Mississippi.
clung to the ground and lingered in the
You could tell
cornfields
slave
and wild
stories and you'd
patches
believe.
along the back roads.
Maybe this is
Sometimes it even breached out over the line that separated road from field, like an invading spectral army rapidly claiming territory, a kind of liquid smoke flooding the landscape. The old-timers that hung around the Red Rooster Saloon say it was a bad omen when the mist seemed to come
maybe
alive under
the
a moon that was
warlock
bright and
is-
full.
They can't
They
even
said that when the moon
their
was
shit.
right and the mist was moving, you could sometimes see the faces of the dead in it. And if you did happen to glimpse their faces, you would soon find
get
yourself
killed.
joining them in the mist. Tonight was like that. And as I stood beside my shiny new Impala, ribbons of the low-hanging fog slowly snaked their way through the golden brown wild glass like spectral fingers looking for
brown
something
wild
to grasp.
glass.
I began to walk towards the field, leaving the door of the Impala open.
Yeah,
So
girl.
the interior lights would serve as a beacon for Amy and I to find our way back to the car in the dark,
Abby.
so we could find our way back to the light. The car radio sounded hollow and eerie against the silence of the summer night that was usually so full of the symphonies that crickets and other nocturnal insects produced. I stepped
you
off
still
the
have
road
tons. Yeah,
and
you
began to
fuck, you
walk toward the
suck.
ominous watchman that was our oak tree. The mist washed over my ankles like small waves on a beach.
Wash my
As I
ass.
waded deeper into its dead waters, it took me in as one of its own. I was getting closer to the oak now, closer to Amy. I looked back at my new Impala. The voice on the radio sounded disembodied and strange from this far out, like it was on the other side of a velvet curtain. The car itself looked further away than it should have, a small island of light alone in an ocean of darkness. Suddenly, something in my mind screamed that Amy wasn't here anymore. Screamed at me to run back to the light before it was
Turn
too late.
stories off
before
and
I
put
lost
music
to the
back on.
darkness. I began to turn around towards the Impala, began to head back to the salvation and warmth that the light held within it.
There's
That's when
Impalas,
I
there's
heard
Salvation.
Amy's voice called to me. It was a harsh whisper that carried over the distant ghostly sound of the Impala's radio, like nightingale's wings passing through the night air.
Companies.
I'm coming, Amy! I shouted. My voice echoed as if I was at the bottom of the Grand Canyon.
on!
My pace quickened as I clumsily stumbled and tripped my way through the uncultivated ground that
Yeah,
hid
like
beneath
what?
the
Like what?
mist
Like
until
what?
I finally reached the old oak. I rounded the deep-rooted tree to where I left my love, and to my shock
Oh, those have
and
the
horror,
maximum-
Amy was nowhere to be found. I began to panic, screaming her name like a drowning man
Oh,
trying to
shit.
get the attention of someone on a
You
distant
should have always
shore.
done that, you fuck.
Amy! Amy! Where are you, Amy? My pulse raced, my heart pumped hot magma through my veins as
6
it
hour
attempted
mark.
to beat its way out of my chest. I fell to my knees as the world began to spin.
I have to stop this. Please let me
I'm
out.
over here, Michael. Her voice was soft and reassuring. I looked up at the love of my life. The fog had risen
you're fucked.
to
You're
a
a
white
loser.
wall that flanked it and seemed to stop just behind
Here
where
comes
she
a
stood.
sneeze.
Her face was veiled in darkness. Her white prom dress blended gently into the churning mist and seemed to move in sync with it. Her head slumped to her left
Okay,
side.
after the
limply.
story's done, it
Her
has to.
ear
The stream
almost
is
touched her
fucking done.
shoulder.
That's like
I've
3
been waiting
minutes.
for you, Michael. Come dance with me. I stumbled to
I'm
my
coming,
feet and
Amy.
was suddenly
That's
aware
gross.
that the song that was now
That's my
playing
new
on the
stepmother,
Impulse
tranny
radio
lady.
was
I don't know.
Santo
I
and
think
Johnny's
that's the technical
Sleepwalk.
term.
It was our song, and I knew for sure then that fate had put us together for this one perfect moment, and that we would stay together forever.
You can't
I
stop
walked
till you
over
beat
to
it.
Amy. My head hung low in shame from
Stop
hurting
buying the
her
rocks so
earlier.
you at least have a chance to die.
I'm sorry about my stuttered
I don't like the
apology
sound of
was
that.
cut off by a chilled hand cupping my
I'm
chin
coming
and
along.
gently lifting
Annie,
it until I
Annie, where
looked
are
into the
you?
glimmer of moonlight that reflected in her obsidian eyes like water at the bottom of a deep well. Shh, it's okay, Michael. Won't you dance with me? I could hear the longing in Amy's voice. It had hunger, a desire
Written
to
all
be
over it.
touched. I responded by putting my arms around her waist. She, in turn, put hers around
Oh yeah,
my
you should
neck,
have that stopper.
resting
the
her head on my
showstopper.
shoulder, pressing close to me as we began to sway to the tempo of the
Stalker,
song.
spocker, showstopper.
Amy felt cold,
Rocker.
so I held her even closer in an attempt to warm her. But instead of transferring heat, only the cold passed between us. An unnatural, icy chill
Upload this
made
entire
my
stream to
stomach
YouTube.
turn and my
Okay.
skin prickle into goose flesh. I tried to separate from her as I felt Amy's cold lips press
Felt it
against my
going
neck,
on your
but her
neck.
grip was like a vice. She was frozen to me. Her arms around my neck were like a tightening noose. She softly whispered in my ear that we should always be together, and as the mist enveloped us, her dry teeth began their dark work
dry
on my
teeth.
neck. I smiled to myself, wrapped in the perfectness of the moment. The last light I would ever see faded from my vision, and somewhere, not so far away,
I was so happy to get killed
a
by her.
whippoorwill began to
Okay, the
sing.
stream's over. Holy
I
shit,
join
dude.
Amy.
The stream is
forever
over.
Now. Join her where I left her, in the darkness, in the mist.
Stream's over. Yeah, good. This song is done. The stream's over. I won. Get that horse charging in. Oh, yeah,
I'm gonna come. I know you
the
came
stream
on
is
my
over.
leg.
Please